You are listening to selfdiscoverymedia.com, where illumination and inspiration is but a click away. With so many genre topics for you on everything that you need to know in life. We celebrate and share the people who have taken the journey before you and who are now here to serve you with their wisdom and their knowledge. The next show coming up is...
Adding a new addition to the Wellness Journey podcast series, we present Loving the Natural You. As we travel through life, our mind, body, and spirit go through a multitude of changes. And without taking time to learn about these changes, you might feel lost, insecure, and unhappy. It's time to establish peace with those transitional periods we experience in midlife. It's time to focus on ways to honor your temple and locate your inner joy. Join me, Lynnis Woods-Mullins, on Wellness Journey podcast series as we talk with a new group of forward-thinking experts who can provide insight and help us develop another level of self-awareness through loving the natural you. Hi, this is Lynnis Woods-Mullins, and welcome to another edition of the Wellness Journey podcast series, where we get a chance to talk with some of the premier experts in the field of mind, body, spirit wellness, and with a special attention to women over 40. You know, this particular podcast series, as I've said before, is about loving the natural you. And what motivated me to do that series is that I feel that sometimes women over 40, 50, 60, and beyond forget about loving who they are right now in this moment in time. Instead of, thinking about the hair, the makeup, the losing weight, the whatever it is that we think we need to do to ourselves to be enough or acceptable or okay. We need to learn how to love who we are right now in this moment in time. I know that it's a quest for me to be able to say, I love the natural me. I'm working on it, but I do know it's something that's really important in terms of embracing our aging process and being overall well in our mind, body, and spirit. It starts first with how we feel about ourselves. So we have talked to a lot of women in this series about, their idea of what loving the natural you is all about. But I thought that for this series, we want to have like a few good men. So this is my few good men segment for the Loving the Natural You series. And I have with us Charles Eduardos, who, his resume is just huge. I don't know where to start, but I can tell you this. He is a host here on the Self-Discovery Network, and I'm so glad that he's taken some time to be with us today. But not only that, let me just tell you a little bit about all of the things that he does. He is an executive corporate coach and trainer and a facilitator. He also is a certified hypnotherapist and a certified NLP master practitioner. He's also a ad heart facilitator, a certified conscious aging facilitator. I like that one. And he also happens to be a pastor of a church in Cleveland, Ohio, All Saints Church. So basically, he is a Renaissance man extraordinaire, full of credentials, but most importantly, full of wisdom. From being an actual police officer to chaplain to now a pastor and executive coach, I bring you Charles Eduardos. Charles, thank you so much for being part of our Few Good Men segment for the Wellness Journey podcast series. It's wonderful to have you here today.
Wow, I feel like I should say, you can't handle the truth, but oh boy, thank you.
It's always great to have a male's perspective. And I was mentioning to my friend on another show I did right before I came on, that I was, she mentioned the importance of having men involved in a particular thing we were discussing. And I said, I am actually interviewing a man today on my Wellness Journey segment. I said, it's important that I, have men on the show as well. I used to all the time before I started specializing in working with women over 40. And she's the one who said, well, yes, you need a few good men. I said, that's what I'll call my segment whenever I have a man on. He's one of the few good men. No. Just kidding, my male listeners. Okay, don't take it personal. Don't take it personal. But anyway, welcome. You and I were chatting the other day about loving the natural you and what we would talk about. And I told you that I really wanted to talk about this whole thing about authenticity.
Yeah.
You hear people talking about striving to be authentic, finding their
Yeah.
authentic self, that kind of thing. And I always struggle with really good words that become buzzwords and get watered down over time. We do this time and time again
Yes.
in our society for our quest of labeling everything. So I
Mhm.
wanted your opinion. How important is it for us as women, in your opinion, and also as people, to be authentic? And what is authenticity? What does that really mean?
Wow. Well, that's multi-part question there, of
Yes.
course, but authenticity, I think, it just has to do with connecting to who we really are. If you want to see an authentic person, look at a baby. They are um, authentic totally. I mean, they're learning. The world is a wonder, and they are exploring and everything. I think when we talk about authenticity and being authentic, it has to do with still holding on to some of that wonder as we look at the world. Um, it has to do with being forthcoming with our thoughts and our feelings, and that's not necessarily being. Uh, and I'll just say it. It doesn't mean that you're just an ass in the way you respond to people, but that you, as the scripture says, speak your truth in love. Um, and it's as we grow up, we learn how to survive mentally, emotionally, physically in the world. And we learn from our primary, secondary caregivers what's right, what's wrong, how to get on. And our first challenge is, how do I get along with mom and dad? How do I live in this particular house? Now we have to deal with the dysfunctionality of the growing up situation and how that affects uh, the person's identity and thereby authenticity. So it's really kind of a dance, and I would even say, as we start to find who we are authentically, uh, we need to also give consideration to the emergence of the new person as we deepen our understanding of ourselves and others, and as we deepen our spirituality, and spirituality is getting to who we really are. Even science talks about consciousness, which is pretty much what we call the spirit or the soul in um, in mystical talk, in spiritual talk, in religious talk. That part of us that goes on forever. We just live in a body, but the consciousness, who we really are, resides in this vehicle called our body, but continues to live on in most religions and faith beliefs. There is that part of us that lives forever. So, wow, authentically getting down to what that is, who that is, and again, it's a journey.
It
It's
is.
a
It is
process.
a journey, and it's interesting because I guess I started doing work on self introspection beginning in my 20s, or maybe in my early 30s, when I
Mm,
was reading a lot of Van Zant, and
mm,
Susan Taylor, and some of the thought provokers, from uh, African American authors, Maya Angelou, and things like that. My
mhm,
orientation was such because I went to Spelman, and so we read a lot of different books, but in particular, emphasis on reading African American women literature. Then
mm,
in my 30s, I was, climbing the corporate ladder, and I started getting more into other trains of thought that was tied more into motivation and success and all of that kind of stuff.
right.
And then in my 40s, I was raising kids, 30s and 40s raising kids. I don't know what I was reading, whatever I could do to escape the idea that I have 4 kids that I was raising. Um, And then in my 50s, I really began another journey. As all my people who follow me, they know I suffered from an anxiety disorder. And I was looking for ways to be well from a holistic standpoint, and began reading people like Melanie Betty and Marianne Williamson
Yeah.
and Eckhart Tolle,
Yes.
Brene Brown, Wayne Dyer, Gabrielle Bernstein, people like that. So, I understand the idea of that metamorphosis and trying to find out your own authenticity. But, everybody has a different path in terms of how they might do that. But if you were to give advice to someone who was really searching to figure out, it sounds so obvious, but it's a real question, who am I? Who they are. What would be your advice? What kinds of steps? Some people want steps. 1, 2, 3. What kind of steps would you give them to help them to begin to explore not just who they are, but how to find out what their passions are? Because that is something we've been talking a lot about lately with women in midlife. What's your passion?
Well, asking yourself some questions. One of the things that I do with my coaching clients that we go through at the very outset, apart from filling out their profile with their contact information and whatnot, because it's important to me to kind of get to know them, so find out, how many children they have and their spouse or significant other. But then we go to what we call the discovery form, and it's simply 20 questions, but yet they're a little bit deep. They are thought-provoking, and I generally will tell the new client, set aside at least 45 minutes to an hour and get your favorite cup of coffee or tea, or maybe it's a glass of wine, a nice Shiraz or Cabernet, and just take your time and relax, be mindful about relaxing, and answer these questions. Turn on the dream machine and answer the questions. Don't think about, does this make any sense, or he's going to think that I'm crazy, but just, again, turn on the dream machine, turn off the critical mind, and write those things out. Now, that's kind of forcing what I would lead into next. I would say to a person to journal, and that's part of every client in my back office system. Each client has their own area where they can do that. They can journal and keep tabs, time stamps, time and date stamps, everything. But a lot of people like to write. So, buy a journal. I actually understand out of my training, handwriting is an ideomotor response that kind of connects directly to our subconscious. So when we're writing out things, it is kind of hot wiring what we are writing into the subconscious. Because of that, I have a handwriting app in my iPad, because I like to use the iPad and keep it. But journaling is important. Write things out. And I think anybody that has been in personal development hears that all so often. Write it out. Again, the scriptures even tell us, write the vision down, make it plain upon the tables, So writing out things and talking out things, because a lot of people process through conversation, but even after the conversation, write it out. That helps clarify and crystallize what's going on. And, just to connect to the deepest passion, feel into the things that we're talking about. I'd like to do such and such, and feel into that, and even kind of imagine doing that. And if it resonates, if it energizes, that is probably a passion. If it causes trepidation, if it causes you to kind of shut down and close down, that may be something that's been projected onto you by parents. And I had a client once that was actually a doctor.
Hmm.
As it turned out, that's not really what he had a passion for. He was a passionate auto mechanic. That was how he tinkered. And so he ended up leaving medicine and getting into and set up several engine repair shops, because that turned out to be his real passion. He's the engine doctor, not the physical
Wow.
body doctor. So it's really interesting how we can discover these things about ourselves. And you don't have to necessarily go to a hypnotherapist, but I think, and I tell most coaches, sure wouldn't hurt to get the basics of NLP down, because you learn some ways of helping people.
Now, what is NLP?
That is neuro-linguistic programming, and it has to do with how we, again, neuro, mind, linguistic, what is the language of our mind and of our consciousness, and the programming, because we basically program ourselves over the course of our life. There's certain ways that we go about doing things,
I'm glad you mentioned that, because in my reading that I've been doing recently on my quest for, figuring out, who else I am or who I want to be, they talk a lot about that script that runs the background, the subconscious, or as somebody calls it, I think it's Wayne Dyer, the habitual mind or whatever. Yeah. What role does that play in terms of how we view ourselves?
Now, it plays a huge role, and it can be a destructive role when because it is subconscious. It is just beneath our conscious awareness. And we'll say things like, why does this always happen to me? Well, part of that is because we're living out Einstein's definition of insanity. We're doing the same thing the same way and expecting a different result, and we don't even realize it's kind of pre-programmed into us. So this is why, and it's terrifying sometimes for people to get outside of their comfort zone, to get outside of the box, as we like to say, and try something different. It's difficult for us to do something different, even when sometimes we're conscious that this is not a healthy situation, but we stay with it because it's familiar.
It's comfortable.
So part of what my Victorious Living System is all about is raising awareness, becoming more consciously aware of what's going on in our subconscious mind, becoming more aware of our feelings at the deepest level. And part of neuro-linguistic programming, as a practitioner, we learn to notice those little subtle shifts in people that we're working with, so that we can help bring that person to an awareness of something that's going on that may be different. It's not that I necessarily know it, but I'll notice a twitch or a shift, even to the flushing of the skin, and say, what just happened? What did I say that triggered you? Because I noticed something, and I'm not sure what it is. And that brings them to an awareness, and they can then say, well, when you said that, that took me, because again, we're always connecting things. Mm-hmm. That reminded me of a time when. So our self-reflexive thinking and the way our mind works, we're always making a connection to what may be happening now, what's being done or said in this moment, but we're always looking for how that connects to the rest of our life. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So for someone who is, seeking authenticity, what I hear you saying is, first of all, you want to write about it, journal it, begin to see what's resonating with your spirit, and then become more aware of subconsciously of things that might cause shifts and that might trigger you. and how that might relate to what's going on in your present life.
Yeah. Well, and the authenticity piece, because is this model that you're trying to live into to be authentic? Because I hear people talk about, well, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and that means I'm authentic. Well, maybe not if that's not really you. You know, you're modeling maybe something that, and not saying that it's bad behavior. It's generally very good behavior when we are intentionally working to be authentic, but maybe that's not really how the real you would do it. And don't get me wrong, modeling is always a very positive thing when you find a positive role model. So that's okay, but we don't want to totally imitate that person, because the reality is, Lynnis, there is only one Lynnis Woods-Mullins in the world. God broke the mold with you. There'll never be one like you ever again. There's never been one like you before. And so it's a matter of just discovering and resting in that beingness, who you really are, feeling that, embracing that uniqueness, and not getting, oh yeah, that's right, I'm bad, I'm the only one, you know. But it's a matter of just embracing that uniqueness and being grateful, gratitude to God, universe, spirit, as I talk on my show, Gus, being grateful to Gus for this uniqueness that you have, and understanding that that uniqueness means that you are going to make a unique contribution to the world. And it will be significant because there is no one else to do it. That's why I tell people, be yourself. Everyone else is taken.
That is true. That is absolutely true. Well, that brings me to something else in terms of women in general and how we think. And it kind of goes along with the whole authenticity thing. I think that one of the issues that most women have, I know I have it, is that we just don't feel like who we are is enough. That we need to be more in order to meet the expectations of whatever, maybe even ourselves, but usually the expectations have to do with outside of ourselves, you know, looking for that validation, looking for that confirmation that who we are is okay. How can we flip the script and start thinking about that in a different way, in maybe a more healthier way?
Well, here, let's go back. And again, in my background, my spiritual background is Christian. I did study Islam for a while when I got just totally cheesed off with the bovine excrement that's being spewed in a lot of churches. But ultimately, it comes down to God's truth. I totally believe Allah Akbar, God is the greatest, and in any language. So it comes down to, in the creation story, in the Christian tradition, God took a rib from Adam's side. And I guess I'm going to speak here a little bit to what I believe is the man's role in all this. Many cultures, many generations, going back many years, thousands of years, have had women in a subservient type of a position. And it was the norm. It was, as James Brown put it, this is a man's world. But then listen to the second part, it wouldn't be nothing without a woman or a girl, all right? So, and the woman comes from the side, which to me symbolizes that there is a completion there. There is the other half of the whole. And he didn't take the bone from the foot so that man could walk over women. and he didn't take the bone from any part of the head so that the woman would be over the man necessarily. But I think it's a matter of, in this time, and as we become more enlightened, embracing and honoring the wisdom of women and recognizing that I think every man needs to come in touch with his femininity, because the reality is, from science, tells us that every man has estrogen hormones in his body, and every woman has some testosterone in her body. There is that feminine aspect that every man has, which I think sometimes becomes threatening for some men that are particularly homophobic, because they're afraid, oh, am I gay? And it's like, well, that wouldn't necessarily be the most terrible thing, but that it's not even about that. It's about honoring another human being regardless of gender, and just being and see, that comes with being at peace with yourself and being authentic with yourself, that you're not threatened. So the male part is, I think, lighten up with the testosterone, guys. Seriously.
You're saying that you think it's the male part that's causing the women to feel like sometimes they're not enough, that they need to do more.
I think it's a part. I think it certainly plays a role, but also, again, history plays a role, because for so many years, women being in that, well, even in the Hebrew tradition, even in this country, oh my God, we go back to a point in time in the early history of the United States of America where women were considered chattel. Women and children were chattel. Again, it was all the man's thing. And then we, oh Lord, forgive me, women of the world and women that are listening. Oh my goodness, the woman that we have honored on our money now for women's suffrage and getting women to vote. When was then?
Now I'm having a gray fog moment too.
Yeah, well, I'll blame it on my age, but
I'm blaming it on mine. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And look at Eleanor Roosevelt and some of the amazing things that she did toward, and that was unheard of for a woman in her time, so you take that, and in the case of our beautiful women of color and minority women, it's even doubled, because of all of the hateful things that have happened as a result of slavery and bigotry and racism. So when you look at all of those things, there's no real simple fix other than just know in your knower that you are God's unique child. And, God gave you the hair texture. He gave you the skin color. He gave you everything that God determined you were going to need in order to be the best possible person that God could make. In my case, he said, boy, you don't need no hair, so I got the scalp the Lord wanted me to have.
It's interesting, because I think that if we're operating in our so-called authentic self, for lack of a better description, part of that is realizing that you truly are enough. Because I know intellectually that God has given me everything that I need to be able to move forward on the journey that he has placed me with. I also learned today during my Bible study that, God sometimes allows you to be tested, but it's never more than what you can bear. If you choose to follow the impetus on what to do next to get out, because that impetus, it could be whatever it is, the higher calling that speaks to you, pet rock to Holy Spirit, what you want to call it. But you have this voice that you know is authentic, that you know it's the real guidance. But the difference is, or the decision is, or the challenge is, what do you listen to it or not?
Yeah.
Will you listen to it or not? And I
Yeah.
believe that one way to approach authenticity as we age is to start acting on that voice, because your life experience should kick in to tell you, that's the right voice to listen to. Because remember what happened the last time you didn't listen to it? It was a hot mess. Whereas when you're in your 20s, you don't have the frame of reference for a lot of life experience. So you're thinking, I'm going to do that because you don't know better yet. But you know what I'm saying? When you know better, you do better. I think definitely when you get to that 40, 50, 60 range, one of the reasons why you're questioning all of this and searching for authenticity, or searching for your passion and all that stuff, is because your life experience has taught you that there's something more than just doing stuff because you're doing it. There's something deeper there. And I think that part of arriving at discovering who we truly are, loving the natural you, is recognizing not just who you are, but that you are enough.
Yeah.
And if you want to be more, that's okay. But if you want to be just like this and don't change it, that's okay too.
Yes.
I believe that as we grow older, we're going to continue to grow and expand and learn. So I'm not saying that we should stop doing that. But as we learn, grow, and expand, we even check in more so to the fact of learning who we are and being okay with that.
Exactly right. And just like you're saying, the experience, that goes back to how we memories play such a role in who we are today. And then, again, we're taught that this is the way it is. We are presented through media, radio, television, movies. We're presented with these images of, what a real man is, what a real woman is. And it's like, excuse me, again, this is movie land. In the real world, what's the difference? And again, question. I said it earlier in the program, and I say it again, question everything. It's okay. I tell folks in my church, that you have some churches where they say, well, you never question the pastor. Don't question the man of God. Please, seriously, question. And the model is even there in the Bible, where David questioned, and the prophets, Isaiah, Elijah, Elisha, they question, ask the questions. It's okay. I have found God is a very secure person. Okay. So question things, question yourself, and be open to.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we can ask the questions, but you have to be open to the answer, because sometimes the answer doesn't come in the guise that we think it's going to come in.
Exactly.
So we have to let go of expectations in terms of how the answer is going to come, and even when the answer is going to come. Because even as we age, and with all this life experience and everything else, we all still struggle with patience. Okay, I did this, and this, and this is supposed to happen, and come on now.
Right.
I am learning, and I relearn every day, that it's not about my timing, it's about the universe's timing. Yeah. But I do know that when you are on the right track in terms of, defining or redefining who you are, discovering who you are, if you're on the right track in terms of walking down that path in the way that the universe has intended you to, the universe rises up to conspire to help you.
Yes.
So if you're meeting some resistance, if you're running into challenges and obstacles and problems, more than likely, that's a clue that maybe this is something that really isn't the real you. And there's a difference between operating within your authenticity and coming against challenges and coming against challenges. You can feel the difference. You can feel the difference.
Yeah. And you bring a very good point too. With authenticity comes synchronicity.
Good.
And that's where you have these signs. You will have a thought maybe that you get from your inner wisdom, from the Holy Spirit, whatever. you'll get that thought, and then you'll turn around and have a conversation with somebody that will confirm or will say something that is right in line.
Mm-hmm.
And even to the point where you'll meet a total stranger that will speak into your life and will speak something that again, in your knower, because it lines up with thoughts that you've been having or questions that you've been asking yourself. So synchronicity tends to follow that authenticity. And again,
I have before I forget, because of Gray Fog, I have an example of that because I've been doing this searching and this work, as you know, I've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
I was preparing for a client that's starting in about a couple of weeks or so, and starting coaching services with me, and she was interested in making some shifts in terms of her leadership style. So I was doing some research on that, and I went to the bookstore to pick up a book by Wayne Dyer on Excuses Be Gone, which I definitely recommend to any midlife person to read if you want to make some significant changes in terms of what that script is that's running in your habitual mind or subconscious, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, prior to that, I had been listening for the last couple of weeks or so to Wayne Dyer's stuff on YouTube. And I used to be, read his books and stuff like that, but I hadn't really done a whole lot since he's passed. I had not really listened to a whole lot since he passed. And the last 3 weeks or so, it just popped in my mind to do it. So I said, okay, I'll do it. And then after I bought the book, the next day, and this is unusual too, because it was a Sunday, and I usually don't do interviews on Sundays. Somehow or other, this person was able to schedule themselves on my calendar. And normally I would have canceled it, but because of who it was, and her name is Jennifer Elizabeth Masters, she is phenomenal. And because of who she was, I said, you know what, I want her on my show. I'm just going to do it. Must be meant to be for some reason. So on that Sunday, we're, chatting right before we go on to interview. And I'm reading her bio. Now, she's been on my show once before, about 6 years ago. And it was not in her bio, this one fact, but it was amazing. I'm reading the bio, familiarizing myself before I go on air. And I see at the bottom that she was the life coach for Wayne Dyer. I was just like, what? That just blew me away. And so when I shared that with her, she said, you know what, Lynnis, you're on the right path, because that's just the universe conspiring you. And she said, and probably Wayne too. But she said she knew Wayne and talked with him almost up until the day he died. They were very good friends. They became very good friends. And she said, that's just him. You're on the right path. Continue to do what you're doing, because that's what happens when you get that synchronicity like that. It's not a coincidence. Listeners, please, there's no such thing as coincidence. And I'm assuming that you already know that because you're listening to this broadcast. But confirm.
Yes. What is it? Another expression, there are no accidental meetings, only divine appointments.
Only divine appointments.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I absolutely do believe that. And it frustrates me when I hear people say, oh, that's just a coincidence. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, you're missing the whole point of how this works. And you're missing that little energy nugget that you might need right now to help you along the journey. Because when that kind of thing happens, when that synchronicity happens, it is confirmation and affirmation that you are on the correct, authentic path.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Got me tearing up. It's just, that's.
You said, well, that's it. Yeah, that's it. And that's kind of how I felt too, because then, it prompted her to share even more about her experience with Wayne Dyer and some of the things that she learned herself. And in fact, she even told me what happened to her in terms of how she met him. She was one in hundreds at a crowd that he was addressing. And something that she felt said, he needs my services. Now, she said she wasn't even thinking about it in terms of money. She's a psychologist, but she also does energy healing, Reiki. I mean, she's just an amazing woman. And she said she just felt that he needed something that she had to give. Remember what you just said, that everybody has a uniqueness about them that only they have, okay?
Yes.
So she didn't even try to get to him because he was surrounded by people.
You are listening to selfdiscoverymedia.com, where illumination and inspiration is about to click away.
His
We have
handler,
so
found
many
his
genre
handler.
topics
As
for
the
you
crowd began to thin
on
out, she figured out
everything
who
that you
his
need to
handler
know
was.
in life.
Hmm.
We
Said,
celebrate and share the
give this
people who have
card
taken the journey
to
before you
Wayne.
and who are
He
now here to
needs to
serve you
talk to
with their
me.
wisdom
And then
and their knowledge.
she
The
gave it, and
next
then
show
she let
coming
go of the
up is
expectation as to whether he would contact her or not, because she was obedient and did what she
Hmm.
needed
Right.
to do. Okay, this is what her authentic self was telling her to do.
Right.
She had traveled from out of town to come and see him. She went back to her hotel. Within an hour, telephone rings. She picks up the phone, and he says, "Hello, this is Wayne Dyer. I understand you want to talk to me." And she's like, "Wow!" And by this time, he was world-renowned, famous. He
Yeah.
wasn't at small time. He was world-renowned
Yeah.
and famous. And she
Yes.
said, "Wow!" And so that's how he became her client.
Mm.
And he said that he felt the energy in the car that he needed to call this person, because he was purely going by that inner voice that tells you what to do, even if it doesn't make
Sure.
sense. He was purely into that. He recognized it. And when you're operating in your knowing like that, get ready, because after a while, things will start boom, 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 boom. And when that happens, do as I say, not as I do. Receive it. Be
Yeah.
grateful for it. Don't question it. Okay.
Yeah.
Be careful who you share those kinds of breakthrough moments.
Oh, now
with.
that's say you can say that one again, Lynnis. It's don't let people steal your dreams. There are spiritual vampires out there that will suck the life out of you.
That's right. Don't let people poo-poo on your
Yeah.
journey quest.
Yeah.
Along the journey is going to
Absolutely.
be some, I'm just going to say, going to be some shit on that journey.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
let people put shit on your journey. Okay.
Yeah.
You got enough of your own. So,
That's well, exactly right. And the whole idea of relationship, we need to get into a deep, intimate relationship with ourselves.
yes.
If we don't have deep relationship with who we are and what we're feeling,
That's so true.
then we can't really have a good and
No,
deep
and you gave me
relationship with
some
another person.
advice. You gave me some advice last week, and I haven't done it yet, but I'm setting it aside on my calendar.
Mm.
Charles Eduardos, Pastor Eduardos, executive life coach extraordinaire, Charles Eduardos told me last week, he said, "Lynnis, you need to set aside 12 hours and do nothing." He said, "I know it's going to be hard to do." So, okay, that's not a problem. I can shut off my social media, do all this other kind of stuff. And while I'm just thinking and doing nothing, I will color, adult coloring. For those of you who know me, I'm passionate about here's my latest creation. I don't know if you can see it or not, but that's my latest creation, my adult coloring, okay? But he was like, "Okay, yeah, that's fine, Lynnis, but no. I mean, do nothing. Just sit and be." In other words, the way I think about it, instead of being a human doing all this stuff, just be a human being and just sit. And out of that, he told me, will come miraculous stuff. Now, that was last week, and I have yet to do it totally, but I am looking forward to doing it sometime next week. And listeners, I will tell you how it works out. And I know 12 hours seems like a lot, but 12 hours out of a lifetime, that's a nanosecond. It's a nanosecond. And to be able to spend that kind of time just with you and with the universe and with your God or your spiritual essence, whatever that is, I could imagine, I haven't done it yet, but I could imagine could be life altering and put you well on your way to your authenticity. What's the word? Authenticity. Okay, I'm words now on top of everything else. Grateful, no words. But I can understand the value of that. We have so many distractions, so many things that are being, put in front of us all the time, that the idea of disconnecting sounds very, very good, but also setting aside that time frame like that for nothing but you is probably one of the greatest forms of self-love and self-care.
Well said.
You could ever do.
Yes, well said. It is, and this is what makes people wonder why their personal relationships, their intimate relationships don't work well. And, again, you can't really love another person until you really learn how to love yourself, and be comfortable in your own skin, and not with subconsciously, even we're so worried about what this person or that person is going to think, or just be who Gus has made you to be, and love, get into that intimate relationship. And that's what that Sabbath rest. And actually, I'm going to tell the other part of the story. I told you it's a Sabbath is usually a 24-hour period, but let's just start. And this is a part, what I shared with Lynnis, and it was, be gentle, start small, and build up to. And one of the amazing things that happens is when you start to do these things and start to institute these spiritual practices, you become passionate for it and you want it. It becomes more and more important. It becomes the air you breathe. It becomes your daily bread, where you find that's where your creativity and your authenticity just blossoms out of this time that you spend with you and coming to know yourself and discovering who that authentic person is. And I think you'll end up going, oh, I love me.
I don't know about that part, but okay. That could be my goal, I guess.
Yeah. But that's it, and just I have people sometimes say I get a little goofy and everything, but there was a time when I couldn't do that because I was afraid, that might not, what will people think, anymore, just lighten up, be who you are.
That's right. I was going to say the authenticity quest is all about where you're at, not what other people think you should be at or tell you you're at or whatever. It's not about them. It's about you. Maybe that's the very first thing you might say before you even start with the whole idea of journaling, that this is about me, okay? Yeah. And not about all the other things. And there's nothing wrong with that whole me thing. And I'm not talking about me too, okay? I'm not going into that piece. But the whole thing about me being important enough to spend that kind of time with. There's nothing wrong with that. You're not being selfish, because if you don't start being more me-centered in terms of finding your authenticity and getting well and emotionally and everything else, then you will begin to have it permeate into your other relationships. How they say if you want to first heal something with someone else when it comes to a relationship or something that doesn't seem to be right, first take a look at yourself. That old-fashioned adage about pointing the finger at them, and then you've got four pointing back at you.
Yeah.
You can't control what they're doing, but you can control what you're doing. And I have learned that the more I work on myself, even if the others around me aren't working on themselves, there's still fragments of benefits that happen as a result of that. Stuff that gets in the atmosphere. It's kind of like a virus that they pick up. A good virus. Good virus, that they pick up, that they kind of begin to make that change, to accommodate the change in you, even though they don't know it. That is a positive byproduct of the quest. Okay? Yes. That's something you can look forward to that can happen. Yeah.
Absolutely. So when you were saying that, I think we had talked a while back about the whole airplane safety drill that they take you on. If the cabin loses pressure, the masks will drop down, and if you're traveling with someone that you're caring for or children, make sure you put the mask on yourself first and then put it on them. So, and again, that's one of those societal norms that, and we get drilled into our heads not to be selfish, and it's gone, far too far to one side. I love the point that you're making. You have to take care of yourself if you're going to take care of anyone else, if you're going to be there for others. As a matter of fact, my secretary was just saying to me earlier today, she said, Pastor, you need to go home and rest. You got to take care of yourself. What are we going to do if you go down? And she's right
about that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are those, and that's true. That's true. The podcast series is about loving the natural you. Yeah. And if I were to ask you for three words, what would be the 3 words that you would use to describe what it means to love the natural you?
What does it mean to love the natural you? It means to love God, because God is in you, and you are in God. Authentic love is loving God, that's it.
That's it. In fact, that is a wrap. Thank you so much, Charles, for being on the Wellness Journey podcast series. And for those of you who are interested in finding out more about Charles Eduardos and his wonderful services of executive coaching and private counseling sessions, and finding out more about NLP and all the other wonderful things that he does, maybe attending his church if you happen to be in the Cleveland area. All that information is on the show page. And for those of you who are listening on Anchor FM or through one of the many, many audio platforms that we have, just click on where it says show page, and it will take you right to all the links on how you can contact Pastor Charles Eduardos. I want to make sure I say hello to all of our YouTube listeners. It's wonderful that you're joining us as well, and all the audio platforms out there. I won't name them all. They're too many to name, but you know who you are. Thank you so much for listening. And thanks again for taking this journey with us. Just remember that along the journey, there's all kinds of bumps and grinds and stuff that happens that's unpredictable. Just remember, though, that there are tools, tips, and techniques that you can use to continue the journey to be well in your mind, body, and spirit. Thanks so much for listening. And this is Lynnis Woods-Mullins saying goodbye for now. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have something to share, please comment below. For more Wellness Journey shows, be sure to click the subscribe button below and check out my Facebook group, Wellness Woman 40 and Beyond. Continue taking this journey with us as we explore ways to be well in our mind, body, and spirit while loving the natural you.
We hope that you enjoyed the show and were inspired. Come and visit us at selfdiscoverymedia.com and see what other shows we have for you. And please do visit our selfdiscoverycommunity.org and see how you can be a part of giving back. Thank you very much.